Then I will edit this. It's not live on Facebook, so yeah, we can stop and stuff. So, okay, here we are. This is Rudolf Fuchslin. I will interview him for the Foundation for Interdisciplinary Development of Science, Technology and the Arts, and he is a highly interdisciplinary profile, so we would like to know a little bit about him and his trajectory. So please, Rudolf, introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Rudolf Fuchslin. I'm working at the Zurich University of Applied Sciences in Winterthur. That's one occupation. Another one is at the European Center for Living Technology in Venice. And in addition, I'm the president of the board of directors of a Museum of Natural History in Switzerland. My main occupation is at the ZHW, Zurich University of Applied Sciences, where I have full professorship in complex system science.
Okay, well, that's already quite interdisciplinary, like natural history, museum, living technologies, and applied science.
Well, you have to fill out Excel sheets everywhere, you know, that's my occupation.
Yeah. So, what is your first? I would like to know what is your opinion regarding the importance of complexity science, complex system science, and interdisciplinarity, whether these two things combine or you can consider them as orthogonal or independent, because I feel that there is some sort of connection.
Well, I would agree that there is some form of connection. However, fundamentally, these two terms are orthogonal on a first glance, in the sense that you have to ask, why do we need interdisciplinarity? Well, I think there is a reason for that. You know, when science developed into different fields. These different fields, or the development or evolution of these different fields, comes from the fact that in each field you need specialized concepts, methods, languages which adapt to the specific problems of this field. That means these languages are highly effective and efficient with respect to these specific settings. But that means that over time, sort of a speciation occurs. What is optimal and most efficient in one field is not any more efficient in another field. So the quest of interdisciplinarity is sort of, let's say, a translation between these different, not anymore optimal for every field, languages and methods. Now, if the problems, spoken in a very loose sense, were non-complex, this translation process would be trivial. As a matter of fact, I think there is the real problems come from the fact that this translation process is non-trivial, or if you like, complex.
Yeah, and that's very much related to what today it's called wicked problems.
Exactly.
Like sustainability, for
Exactly.
example. So can you elaborate a little bit on that specific case, so people can maybe understand this abstract setting in a concrete
Well, at
scenario?
least in my reading, you know, a wicked problem is a problem which cannot be split in a sensible way into individual subparts, which can be solved individually and then, so to say, recomposed into a whole one. And that specifically applies to most problems in politics. Okay, man, see, I don't want to boast here, but I'm a member of a very small parliament in Switzerland, and so I'm confronted with very trivial problems. What type of roof shall we put onto the school buildings? And on the first glance, you always think, well, okay, that's a very easy fact-based problem, but the more you delve into this stuff, you see that, well, that's connected to all sorts of other issues, and the reduction of a situation into, let's say, individual modules, that's not always possible. As a matter of fact, good engineering is about constructing systems which can be decomposed. As a matter of fact, most evolved systems, most not planned systems, they are not necessarily modular. Human beings, if human beings plan something, they tend to make it in a way such that the problem is hierarchically organized and modular. But evolution is not bound to what human beings can think, and therefore many problems are, well, quite stubborn when it comes to planned solutions, because they are, as you called it, wicked.
And complexity theory helps to find these sort of hidden modules sometimes.
If there are hidden modules, but sometimes you have to cope with the situation that there are no modules at all. And then, well, in this situation, you have just to accept the situation. It's some problems are, let's say, either completely reducible, or let's say what I would like to call only weakly reducible, in the sense that you can do a decoupling, or you can do as if certain aspects could be decoupled, but you always have to be aware of the fact that this is only an approximation. When it comes to sustainability, for example, you always have to take into account that yes, you can, and that's probably a necessity, you can try to decouple well, problems, questions of sustainability and the related politics into individual parts, but you have to be aware of the fact that there are in reality certain couplings, especially when it comes to social issue, which just have to be either first, which have to be realized first, and which require according compensations.
And that's where the interdisciplinarity or multiple perspectives, which is maybe a little bit more general, which is not necessarily a disciplinary field, but multi-perspective view of reality, it's necessary probably in the future, and it's kind of like the lines that with the foundation we want to foster. And in this regard, education is a fundamental tool to prepare the future generations and the future state of the world for implementation of solutions of wicked problems that embrace complexity and multi-perspectiveness.
Absolutely.
So what is your opinion, or what is the current state in your circle or your prospect for this development of education, multi-perspective education, let's say, just to give it a name?
First, we make an additional distinction. We distinguish between inter and transdisciplinarity,
yes.
but thereby understanding interdisciplinarity as communication between different fields of science, but still being within science, and transdisciplinarity going beyond science. Now, there is, let's say, the sometimes a little bit arrogant approach of scientists that they say, well, if it's not science, it doesn't exist. You know, we can make lots of jokes about politicians or the administrations or whatever. I don't think that this is a good idea. We have to see that, and here I follow a little bit the German sociologist and philosopher Niklas Luhmann. We have to distinguish different subsystems of society. These different subsystems have to communicate, and you should not, maybe it's not a good idea to make value statements about, let's say, the superiority of science or the superiority of whatever. Your foundation does a very good job, because what you are looking for is how to establish communication between the sphere of art, the sphere of science, and the sphere of education. Education is somehow, I would say, well, that these are the connections between these different fields. Education happens, of course, with respect to children. We all know that, but education is also something that applies to adults, to grown-ups. You have to life. Man, I'm an old guy, so I can tell you, life is a permanent educational process.
Great. Well, to finish the interview, I would like you to invite you to Chile whenever you want to come. And I don't know if you want to give a sort of recommendation or inspiration that for you or for the people that you work with is important to keep in mind, like an advice for us that we are developing this foundation, and there is a community that follows us as well. So if there is any recommendation to follow this path, that is the path where you are at.
That's a good question. Okay, I can give a general old man's advice.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the first thing I do. Be always aware of the fact that you only see a small part of reality. What you think is reality is actually only a very tiny bit of it. That's important. We have seen that during the pandemics, when lots of people thought that their perspective is the only one.
Yeah.
We see it with respect to economy, all sorts of stuff. You have to be aware of the fact that the world is much bigger than you. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, having said this, multi-perspectivity is important, but on the other hand, you have to come to terms. A certain amount of education, in the sense that you develop not necessarily general beliefs, but at least general ways of communication, is an absolute necessity if you don't want to fall apart
Yeah.
as a society.
Yeah. Understood. Thank you. Well,
Yeah,
thank you, Rudy.
thanks a lot.
That was a very good conversation.
Thanks.
Bye bye,
Pleasure
everyone.
on my side. Bye bye.